Hello, welcome to James's pre-fight, post-fight MMA show, where we recap all the important things happening in the sport of MMA, and I, your host James, try to explain to you what's going on in the sport and make it as easy as 1, 2, 3 for you to understand. We hope you enjoy the show. Fans assemble. We're here to talk about another UFC fight night. This time it's taking place in the Apex, in the small octagon in Las Vegas, with the main event being top 5 Calvin Kattar defending his spot against Arnold Allen. It's actually a much better fight night, than the previous ones that we had, Alexa Grasso versus Araujo. This one's actually pretty good. We decided to pick out the 3 best fights on the card that you have to watch out for. And with me for this show is my usual co-host, Mike. And so Mike and I were just going to get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to make it very casual, make it very easy for you to understand. And please forgive me, Mike, if I seem a little down. I'm still coming off of UFC 280. So please forgive me.
Yeah, I know you took it a little rough there.
I know I binged it. I think I gained like 6 pounds from all of it. It was awful. So hopefully this and the Jake Paul fight will take my mind off of last Saturday. So the first fight we're going to talk about, and I'm going to say, like the usual, I'm going to say the stats, and we're going to go over the physical traits about these guys, and then we're going to get into who we think is going to win and why. So first fight, we're actually not going to do the third fight from the top. We're going to go fourth. Josh Fremd versus Treasean Gore. Josh Fremd is 9-3. He is 0-1 though in the UFC. He is very tall. He's 6'4", with a 76-inch reach. He is about, I believe, 28 years old. And yeah, he's his last fight was his first UFC fight. So not a lot. There's not a ton to go off of, but I picked this fight because I think it's going to be great action. Me and Mike like to go over how both of these guys are winless in the UFC, so they're going to really try to like scrape a win. And so Treasean Gore is 4-2. It's 2 losses. So he was undefeated before he came to the UFC, and both UFC fights he lost. I believe one by TKO and one by decision. Where he kind of like not gassed, but he was like very conservative in his first fight. So he's 6 feet tall, so he will have a height disadvantage. 75-inch reach, and he is also 28 years old, and he's coming off of 2 losses as well. And most people would know Treasean Gore from The Ultimate Fighter. A lot of people had very high expectations for him. But after his last 2 fights, especially the second fight where he ended up getting TKO'd, ground and pounded on the ground, he hasn't lived up to expectations. So both guys, I think, are gonna really try to show up for this fight, and I think they're really gonna try to put it on each other. And I think these two, it's impossible for either one to be boring. So, Mike, what do you think? There's not a lot of time to go off of. Both of these guys haven't had success in the UFC, but what do you see with both of them being winless in the UFC, especially Gore, who a lot of people had high expectations for and was undefeated before his UFC run?
Yeah, I have to say about this fight is that obviously both need to win very, very badly. And the stakes of any fight where both competitors have pretty much everything to lose at this point, truly makes it something I think that's must watch. And I was watching a lot of Gore's fights prior to the UFC, and I was really enjoying his explosiveness.
Yeah, he's very
And
quick and
this
powerful.
wasn't a young prospect that I really had any eyes on. Wasn't, I know, like you mentioned, a lot of people were very interested in his career and his potential, but he really wasn't someone I had seen um, a lot of, as others have. But I really enjoyed some of his explosiveness that he showed
Mm-hmm.
in his pre-UFC fights. And, you know, the issue here, I think, really is about the size advantage for Fremd, who
Mm-hmm.
is the favorite to win this fight. He's about 175-point favorite. And I could see why, because I think it's going to be a lot easier for Fremd to use his height and kind of push Gore off of him.
Yeah, I think he's gonna like keep him on the outside.
Right, like it's going to be really hard for Gore to stay on his inside and really bring in his explosiveness. And I think if he tries too hard and pushes too forward, then he's going to create vulnerabilities for himself. The one thing of note that I would like to mention, though, in their UFC fights, is that Gore is a lot, and it's just really, really small sample sizes. Is that Gore is statistically better than Fremd. So, like in terms of all those things, like strikes landed,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, he
all those
definitely
different
is.
categories, he has, a position of strength there in comparison. So I think really it's going to be about how much he's fine-tuned his game, and if he can kind of turn himself into a little bit more of a disciplined, complete striker. And I really think that's his best chance to win the fight. I think with the explosiveness that we see from him, I think he has a better chance of potentially finishing the fight. But I would agree that overall, Fremd is the favorite in this one. I think he's a favorite from the sense it's like we need to
He's more
see
well
something.
rounded.
Right. We need to see something from Gore. And if Gore doesn't show the fans watching something special and an improvement, then I think he's going to end up headed for a loss. I did have a really hard time picking this fight. I really am not entirely sure how this is going to go.
Yeah, of course. Like you said, the sample size and things like that.
Right? It is very difficult to pick. However, I did come to the conclusion that I think Gore is going to pull off the upset here.
Okay.
And I'm not sure exactly how. I think if anyone's gonna, I think he'd be more likely potentially to finish this fight,
I would agree with that.
but I'm not so sure I see that coming. But sometimes it takes time, and with time and polish, maybe he'll find some of that inner potential, and it will come out. And I think it's something to keep an eye on. But by like no
hmm
means, if Frem walks out here the victor, I'm not going to be surprised at all.
hmm
Um, just a little bit of like a hopeful optimism that Gore is going to come out and be a little bit more total.
Yeah, I think I 100%. I think you hit on the spot because I was thinking about Gore, like the reach and the height, not the reach, the height specifically, and how Fremd's gonna like try to keep him on the outside, and then like you said, like Gore, he has to get on the inside and use his explosiveness and make the height kind of like a disadvantage in that way.
Right.
And of course, like Gore has really good leg kicks, but he has to be careful of like not getting taken down. Like we've seen him like if you could like take away the explosiveness, it becomes difficult for him. So I think you hit it on the nail. He has to be disciplined, right? Right time, right place, right time. And like I 100% agree. I think if there's a finish, it's probably him because Fremd, he's like so tall, but like he's usually there to get hit. Like we've seen it even in like his fights before the UFC, his career before the UFC, you see him like he's very hittable. So and he's been TKO before, so it's not impossible. So I agree with you. I think Gore is gonna win. And I think it's gonna be like second round TKO, something like that. That's how I think of it. You said Gore is gonna win, right? Sorry, I didn't let you finish, but do you think he's gonna get a finish? And if so, what round?
Yeah, I think if Gore is going to win this fight, it's probably going to be a finish.
hmm
Um, I would say somewhere in the late second, most likely late second. Maybe it goes into three. But
hmm
just to add one more point about this fight, like it's like if he can come out and like stun Fremd early with a nice early shot,
Yeah,
like it could be one of those two. Um, he just comes out really, really strong, gets underneath him, and just clocks him.
yeah, I can see
And
that.
whether, I don't think early finish, but like I said, that could just set the whole tone and just totally like demolish the narrative of the fight.
hmm
Um, I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that happen either. But it's one to watch, and it should be interesting. But I do have a sense of optimism for Gore that he will end up winning this fight, and more likely to be by finish than decision.
Okay. So me and Mike are basically on the same note, where Mike's leaning towards, and I am picking Treasean Gore via finish, most likely second round. That's what we believe. That is an underdog pick right there. So moving on to the next fight, we have in the welterweight division, we have what sort of like a fan favorite, Dirty Bird Means versus Max Griffin, Max Payne Griffin. Shout out to our co-host Ray, who really enjoys that game. So Tim Means is 38 years old. He is, I believe, 6'2". So he is actually very tall for this division. He has a 75-inch reach, I believe. Let me see his age. He is 38 years old, so he is a bit older. You do see it in his record, like he's been TKO'd a couple of times now. But very experienced in the UFC. Has multiple fights. Has fought a lot of good names: Mike Perry, Kevin Holland. He's fought a lot of big names. Max Griffin. He's even fought Masvidal. Tim Means. Max Griffin. He's 18-9. He's 5'11", 76-inch reach. I believe he is 36. Yes, he is 36. And he's 5'9". So he is going to be a bit shorter than Tim Means. And he's coming off a loss where he looked actually pretty good against Neil Magny. Um, you know, let's be honest. Me and Mike always say this. These two guys are not anywhere close to the title. They're mostly like kind of like fringe top 15 guys. Entertaining, basic, but fun to watch. So I think that's we're looking, and Tim Means he always great submission game, great striking. Matt Griffin, great striking, and both guys come over losses, so they're gonna want to put this one behind them. So, Mike, what did you think of this matchup, and who you're leaning towards?
Yeah, well, Max Griffin's a 185-point favorite. The real thing here, I think, and Max Griffin has a lot of experience, facing a lot of more top caliber guys.
Yeah, his potential is definitely a lot higher. Yeah.
And, this is going to be a scrappy fight between two veteran fighters.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to go all out on one another, not really hold back. And I can see why Griffin is the favorite to win this fight because of his experience, because of some of the things we've seen him do.
Yeah. Also, I think it's the age, right? The durability a little bit as well. Like, Tim Means kind of old. You
Right.
see it a little bit.
I think if Tim Means is going to win this fight, it's going to go down in a similar way to the Magny fight, albeit a lot less, a lot more scrappy. I
Yeah.
definitely think, if Tim Means is going to win this fight, it's probably going to be over the full fight, course of the fight,
Mm-hmm.
by decision. I think he just really, really has to avoid getting pummeled very early.
Yeah, same.
I think if Max Griffin does a lot of first round damage, you know, I just don't think like you said, from age and different factors, he's not gonna be able to pull off a Magny where he comes back and wins on decision. Like,
Yeah, he's definitely not
I
going to
think
get
getting
dropped and come.
absolutely hammered. But so I just don't share a confidence in Tim Means going into this
Mm-hmm.
fight. But I think his path to victory would be somewhere along the lines.
Yeah, like putting on
Really,
lots of volume.
he just
Yeah.
has to totally avoid getting absolutely hammered early on. And I don't necessarily mean like a massive knockdown shot that could potentially be a finish. I just mean in general, like he can't fall really behind on points. He can't take a dramatic imbalance in significant strikes. He needs to avoid just the clear and obvious statistics against him. He needs to just be in it. He needs to stay in it and try to find a way to last and take it to distance. But I think in this case, I think the odds are pretty accurate here. I
Hmm.
think Max Griffin's going to do a lot of damage. And
How do you think he gets it done?
this is the tougher part because
Yeah, I think.
I could see Griffin coming out and beating him quick in a round.
I can see that too.
But something tells me about this fight. I'm going to go with Griffin by decision. And I
Okay.
think it's going to be, unanimous decision. It's going to be clear and obvious. But I think Means is going to have enough in him to avoid getting finished. I think he's going to want to really, at this point in his career, in the late stage of his career, to avoid kind of like a catastrophic, defeat.
Yeah.
I think he's going to put every little ounce of energy he's got left into it,
Hmm.
which will make it an interesting fight. But I think Griffin is just too, right now at this stage, based on who he's fought, based on age, different things, gets down to grease and grizzle. I think Griffin just walks away from this one on top. But I will give Means the respect he deserves, and I
Uh-huh.
don't have him getting finished.
I am of a similar note. I'm not gonna, rehash the whole thing. I do believe Max Griffin is at the better stage of his career. Tim Means, he's been knocked out, like hurt and knocked out recently, and hurt even before then. And he's still very good, like you said. Like he's very technical everywhere the fight goes, and he's always had really good cardio. So that's the area I could see him winning this. Um, but Max Griffin, it's not like his cardio's awful, right? I know he got outpaced by Neil Magny, but Neil Magny's Neil Magny, and I think I agree with you. I think he's gonna probably land the bigger strikes. I think that Tim Means is gonna get hurt at certain points, and but the thing is like you, I kind of have a tough time saying like I think Max Griffin has enough power to like stop Tim Means from doing what he wants to do, but I don't think he has like enough power to like actually like TKO him or KO him. That's why I'm kind of having a hard time picking if he's gonna win by decision or knockout. But I always think if you can't pick between like the finish, I think decision is probably more likely. So, and I think Means is probably gonna we're probably gonna see him use like a little bit more like wrestling and kicks and stuff like that, opposed to his other fights. So it's a pretty simplistic fight in terms of our breakdown for it. So me and Mike, we both have Max Griffin via decision over Tim Means, which should be a tense and highly contested fight. So moving on to the main event, which my opinion, this is the one I've been waiting for. Top five Calvin Kattar versus high-ranking Arnold Almighty Allen, England's own. So you have Calvin Kattar. He's coming off his very, very close loss to Josh Fremd. He's alternating wins and losses. Losing to Max Holloway, to beating Giga Jakaze in the beginning of this year, to then losing a split decision in Austin, Texas to Josh Emmett. And Arnold Allen, he's on a really good streak. He hasn't lost a single fight in the UFC. So Calvin Kattar, 23-6. He's 5'11", so he is pretty tall for this division. For 72-inch reach, I believe he is 34 years old. So he is a bit older. He's going to be a bit older than Arnold Allen. And yeah, and he's coming off of his last three have been win, loss, loss, win, loss. And then Arnold Allen, he's 18-1. He is a 70-inch reach. I believe he is 28 years old. He's yeah, it was basically, and his last fight was against Dan Hooker in March. So one thing about Arnold Allen is activity has always been a huge problem for him. Like he gets injured or fights get canceled. But actually, he's been pretty active ever since COVID. More active than he usually is. And in Calvin Kattar, you do feel for him because he's trying to be active as he can. And like we saw at UFC 280, the only thing I did enjoy, Mike, was Volkanovski in front of Makhachev saying how I'm coming for your belt. And we saw that Volkanovski's running out of guys to fight, and Calvin Kattar, you could tell that he's trying to at least get a win, get some momentum, so he can fight for the title. And he understands that Volkanovski wants to have guys who are active and are fighting the top of the division, and these two are, and especially Calvin Kattar. So it's going to be a big spot. I don't know what's on the line in particularly since Volkanovski's moving up, but it should be a big fight. This is the type of fight a lot of us have been waiting for Arnold Allen to get. So, what? Uh, how do you feel about this fight, Mike? And where you're leaning at in terms of picks?
Well, we know Calvin Kattar's advantage is his boxing,
Yes.
and that's his style. That's what he does. But the real
Mm-hmm.
question here is, which Calvin Kattar are we going to get?
Mm-hmm.
And there's been an inconsistency in his performances. I mean, he utterly shocked me when he beat Giga Chikadze.
Yeah,
Uh,
because you thought the chin, right, the durability, maybe gone.
yeah, that was like, and I have a lot of respect for Calvin Kattar. He's actually one of my like personal favorites.
Yeah, like you like to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, he is one of my personal favorites to watch. I enjoy his fights always, and I'm glad to see him back in there. Um, he is going into this fight as the underdog, a slight underdog at
Yeah.
plus 110.
I'm surprised by that.
So this is a question, I think, and this kind of reflects the themes of UFC 280. Um, you know,
Don't bring that up with me, Mike.
I know. I don't want to, but I think it's important because a lot of things happen that are going to reshape, kind of refigure the future in the sport. So this is a kind of situation where like Calvin Kattar's a guy who has obviously like looked out of it and then come back. So he's kind of in the seesaw struggle. And now they're putting him up against somebody who is kind of gunning to be the
Yeah.
future of the division. And that's the real question. Is Arnold Allen the future here? And he's expected to win. I think Calvin Kattar gives you this uncertainty. If you're a person who's into betting, I think this is a really difficult and dangerous fight to bet
Yeah.
on. Hence why the odds are so tight. But I think the key here is Calvin Kattar needs to be better defensively.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to win or lose this fight by his boxing.
Always, yeah.
And it's either going to get him into too much trouble, and Arnold Allen's going to come ready, and he's going to have the counters, and he's going to have the defense, and he's going to win the fight. Or Calvin Kattar's just going to outstrike him, do his thing, be himself, and win the fight. But I think this is going to be a tough, gritty fight. I think it's going to go the distance.
Okay.
But I do think we're going to get a good version of Calvin Kattar. And I do think he's going to win this fight by a very, very tight decision. And it's going to be a great fight, really enjoyable one. Excited for this main event. Excited to watch it.
Mm-hmm. Same.
And I that's what I'm thinking. But it is a very difficult one to pick. Just like, I mean, this card as a whole is very, very
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot
evenly
better
matched.
than the previous fight nights we got,
Yeah,
right?
it's evenly matched. It's unpredictable.
Momentums,
There's
yeah.
some good stakes, both more towards the top of the rankings and for guys all the way more down towards the bottom of the pile, as we discussed earlier, like with Fremd and
Mm-hmm.
Gore. But going back to the main event, big, big stakes. A guy trying to prove his consistency that he belongs at the top, and somebody looking to take over and dispatch someone and knock him down the totem pole, knock him down the rankings, show what he's made of. Think it's going to make for a really good fight. And like I said, this is in the Apex, smaller octagon. These guys are going to have to be on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be no escaping. They're going to have to go at it. And as I said, I think we get the best Calvin Kattar.
Mm-hmm.
And with all due respect to Arnold Allen and his potential and his ability, um, makes it a very even fight.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to ask you
Yeah, sure.
about this fight, right? What do you think Arnold Allen's primary path to victory is? Do you think it's more like a gritty, bear it out kind of win, or do you think he's gonna have more aggression and look to kind of go for it all and exploit the vulnerabilities of Calvin Kattar.
So I think for him to win this, so the problem is for him in this fight is one, the smaller cage, like you said, like they're gonna be on top of each other. And Kattar, we've seen him fight a couple times in this cage, and he's very good at cutting people off and stopping them from moving away. And Arnold Allen, like a big part of his fights is he does need that. Like he uses a lot of movement in his fights, and he has good movement. But I'll be kind of surprised if he could keep that up for 5 rounds. So there is going to be a point where he's going to have to like stand in front of him, and he's going to have to answer with like strikes or like he is. I think, in my opinion, he's probably like a little bit better of a grappler than Kattar. Even though Cater's like he probably has the takedown defense to stop it, but I mean like in terms of like submission game and jiu-jitsu, Allen's probably better in my opinion. But he's gonna have to like I think in the beginning he's gonna like move around. He's gonna kick his calf, I think. It's gonna be a big part, the leg kicks. The the kicks in general, I think. And then the like you said, like Cater, he wins and lives by the boxing basically most of the time. Of course, he does other stuff like kicks and elbows, but I think Allen's gonna have to stay away from that. So he's gonna be either all the way out with kicks, or he's gonna be very close to him with like takedowns and grappling. So that's what I think he needs to do in this fight. He probably has to make sure that Calvin Kattar doesn't push him back too much, and so he has to figure out a way to stop that. So he has to like either hurt him, which is going to be very difficult, I think, because like you said, like Kattar, we're all surprised how he came back against Jakaze with his chin. Or so he's gonna have to either get him to respect him by kicking his legs or hurting him, or he's gonna have to take him down. And the problem, and then even if he does do those things, let's say like he's 100% successful doing all of that, which I don't think he's going to be. Then it's 5 rounds, right? And then Kattar, he's a brilliant 5 round fighter in my opinion. So that's the way I think Arnold's gonna have to win. There's gonna have to be like I always thought Arnold Allen one day he will challenge for a UFC title. I always felt that way. But I do think for him to win this fight like very clean, there's gonna have to be a little bit of like you said last week, like he rises to the occasion. He has all the tools in terms of like technique and ability. It's just things like gas tank and 5 rounds he's gonna have to deal with. I think technically he could get the win, but I think just like you said, like the experience, Cater's been there before, and then it's 5 rounds. So that's how I see it. I think Allen's just gonna have to use more of his well-rounded skill set, but it's gonna run out, I think, eventually. That's how I look at it. So, so you have Kattar by decision, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm leaning the same way. I think Allen, he's very tough and very crafty for someone so young. With his jiu-jitsu and his kicking, but and of course he has the calf kicks, but I think Kattar is just he's gonna put a lot of pressure on him in the beginning, and I think like you said, I do think Cater's gonna have to be very careful. He's gonna have to use his defense to stop the big strikes from coming through, and then of course he's gonna use defense to stop the takedowns of Allen. But I think eventually he's gonna get him tired, and then it's just gonna be him walking him down, basically throwing his combinations. Kind of like I think by the fourth round, it may look like the Jakaze fight, like he's just going forward the whole time. So I see it's gonna be a great fight. Like you said, it's kind of weird and interesting because Allen, he's the younger guy, but he does lack in things of like experience, resume, um, like of course it's a smaller cage, but he does have tons of talent when it comes to the other areas of martial arts. So uh, that's pretty much it, right? You and I have both have Calvin Kattar via decision. Very surprised he's the underdog. When you looked it up, did you assume Kattar was going to be the favorite?
Yeah, I figured it'd be a little tight, but it's I guess it's that
The undefeated thing, right? In the UFC, probably.
yeah, and
Allen.
that English momentum.
Yeah, of course. Carrying it on from Leon. So
Um,
that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed our show. We enjoyed making it. Please look out for our blockbuster of videos of Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva. Me and Mike, Mike, you see him, he becomes an artiste during that video. So and and watch out for our for my Jake Paul analysis video. If you want, we have a Sugar Sean O'Malley breakdown video I made. If you want to see how he beat Piotr Jan, possibly, if you thought he won or not, whatever. So thank you guys for listening, and please comment, subscribe, and we're out.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like what you were listening to, please subscribe to Fans Assemble. And if you can, please give us a rating. Do it for the audio world. They need you.